a summary of the science of spirit. The science of spirit, the last science of absolute science, is where the absolute achieves its goal, the complete knowledge of itself as spirit. Spirit is the absolute, the only reality, the only thing that exists, and is absolutely one. Spirit is the unity of logic and nature, thought and matter, and contains them dissolved in itself in its unity. The science of spirit simply studies the process of the one spirit's actualization, whereby it attains full self-knowledge and freedom. This process involves 3 stages: subjective spirit, which studies the soul becoming spirit and free will; objective spirit, which studies the actualization of spirit's free will in the state and its objective institutions; and absolute spirit, which studies art, religion, and philosophy, the sphere where spirit achieves its highest goal of absolute knowledge and freedom, as the idea, self-knowing, actual, and supremely free. Absolute spirit is the unity of subjective and objective spirit, the unity of the concept of freedom and the reality of freedom. The unity of the concept, inner subject, and reality, outer object, is what Hegel calls, in honor of Plato, the idea, which is absolute freedom, all reality, and the only reality, which religion calls God. In more detail, in subjective spirit, we witness spirit as the soul overcoming its naturalness and becoming free spirit, which is only the concept of freedom, not yet actual freedom. In objective spirit, we watch how the concept of freedom, the absolutely free will, wins its reality and gets realized in the institutions of the state. Absolute spirit, lastly, is the idea, the absolute truth, as the unity of freedom's concept and reality, aka Kingdom Come, the Jedi Order. First, subjective spirit, or mind, divides into anthropology, the soul, phenomenology, consciousness, and psychology, spirit and mind. Spirit is nothing but the ideality of nature, so-called reality. And freedom, the ultimate goal of spirit, results precisely from the idealization and overcoming of the other world nature as independent. We begin in anthropology with unity, with the soul as the sole truth and immateriality of nature, containing all of nature's contents within itself and with nothing outside itself. Then we advance to opposition in phenomenology, which happens when the I, or subject, finally emerges at the end of anthropology, causing the soul's natural contents to be thrust outside of it, becoming an independent, objective world, now in opposition to the I, subject, and consciousness. Finally, after overcoming this subject-object separation, we advance to their unification and a restored unity, that is, to the spirit or mind in psychology. Anthropology, the soul, as the immediate natural spirit or mind, can be summed up thus. The natural soul is in immediate oneness with nature and the soul's natural features and bodiliness. Then the feeling soul enters into opposition and conflict with its naturalness. For example, in hypnotism and insanity. And finally, with the unity of the soul's inner and outer and its mastery of its bodiliness, it becomes an actual soul, an I, and transitions to phenomenology. In phenomenology, we move from sensory consciousness to perception to intellect and end with self-consciousness, whose task is to unite consciousness and self-consciousness via desire, recognizant self-consciousness, and universal self-consciousness. The two are united when the object of consciousness becomes a self, another self-consciousness. This is a unity of opposites, an identity in difference, which becomes reason and spirit and takes us into psychology. Psychology studies the spirit's or mind's theoretical and practical faculties or powers, and ends with free spirit and the actually free will, which then advances from freedom as concept in subjective spirit to freedom as reality and objectivity in objective spirit, in legal, ethical, religious, and scientific actuality. Second, objective spirit or mind. It divides into abstract right, morality, and ethical life, where the free spirit and its absolutely infinite will get actualized through the institutions of the state. Abstract right or outer right divides into property, contract, and right versus wrong, and starts with the free will in its immediate form as a person, sacred and inviolate, who objectifies his will by placing it in an external thing, his property. Right is simply the embodiment or existence of my will in an external object, which leads to contract and wrong. Morality, or inner right, studies the will as a moral subject and deals with purpose and intention and their respective rights, and ends with good and evil, which concerns the issue of why good cannot be realized by the moral will, only by the ethical will. Ethical life, the unity of right and morality, outer and inner, individual and universal will, studies freedom, right and the good, fully actualized. Its moments are the family, civil society, and the state and world history. The family is the ethical moment of natural immediacy and love, which studies marriage, the union of hearts and wills, family property, and children and their education, and the dissolution of the family. Civil society is the moment of difference where the members of the family, the children, come of age and become independent, self-subsistent persons and citizens, each pursuing their own self-interest. Here, we watch how this external state, in its particularization and pluralization, returns to unity and ethical universality via the system of needs, administration of justice, and the police and corporation. The state, as reason incarnate, is the unity of the family and civil society, and is the universal rational will as one individual. The right of the state is supreme. Here we study the Constitution and its three branches: the legislative, executive and judiciary, and the crown, a monarch, and the relations between states, international law, and lastly, world history and its four main periods: the Oriental, Greek, Roman, and European. Their goal is absolute freedom via the absolute self-knowledge of the one world spirit, zeitgeist, the one reality or idea. Lastly, absolute spirit or mind is the unity of subjective spirit, the concept of freedom, and objective spirit, the reality of freedom, namely the absolute idea or truth attained in the three spheres of art, religion, and philosophical science. Art studies the idea and truth in the form of sensuous beauty in its three forms: symbolic, classical, and romantic art, and the five arts: architecture, sculpture, painting, music, and poetry. Religion studies the idea and truth in the form of the good, personified as God, in the mode of feeling and representation, picture thinking, and reaches its highest stage in Christianity, the unity of God and man, finite and infinite. Philosophy, science, studies the idea and truth in its highest form: thought, thinking, and the concept in logic, which includes within itself nature and spirit and all that has preceded. We have returned to the beginning of absolute science and end with the Jedi Order fully actualized. We now have a perfect correspondence of concept, thought, and object, thought, and the perfect self-relation that is absolute freedom. Finally, as I stated on an earlier occasion, in light of recent advances in Hegel's studies, e.g. Richard Winfield's cracking of the code of Hegel's logic, the master key to science, it is my view that within 5 to 15 years, absolute science will be taught in all schools and universities of the world, and God's, the idea's kingdom on earth, the total healing of the world, will at last become a reality. In the spring 2019 semester, I will be teaching the Introduction to Absolute Science, Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit. Thank you.